Good morning, Calvin, and welcome back to our Easter devotionals, Better Story, Better God. Yesterday, we saw the violet of Monday be punctured by the hope, the light of Tuesday. That as that cross comes into view in the story, there is a note of hope and rejoicing, despite, the heaviness of sin and that reality. You'll notice today that the colour has changed again. It's gone from a pink to an intensity of red. Having turned our faces towards the cross in anticipation, today we're going to land at the foot of the cross as Jesus is arrested, tried, tortured, and eventually executed on this rugged Roman cross. This is what Christians throughout the ages have called Christ's passion, or the passion of Christ. And the passion word comes from the Latin word for bearing up under, for suffering, for endurance. We have just come through, the Sunday just gone was Palm Sunday, which is the Sunday when Jesus came into Jerusalem like a king. But as we read this story, you're going to see why it's red, because it is a story of endurance and a story of suffering and a story of bearing up under hardship. Okay, so here's the drama. We've been in the Passover, and Jesus has said that whole story was pointing to him. But listen to what happens next. These bits of the story are from John. First, he's betrayed by his friend Judas. And John says this: "Now Judas, who betrayed him, knew the place where they were meeting, because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. So Judas came to the garden, brought a detachment of soldiers and some officials, the chief priests and the Pharisees. They were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons." Now, if you've ever been betrayed by the people you trusted in, by your friends, you can see the human sorrow in that moment. But not only that, then his other friends abandoned him, the ones who were supposed to and said they would stick by him. Peter, for example, John says this: Peter was waiting outside the door while Jesus was being trialed, and a servant comes in and says, "You aren't one of the man's disciples too, are you?" What does Peter say? "I'm not." Those who are supposed to be closest to him abandoned him. He then undergoes this very suspect trial where the evidence is really sort of cloudy and strange, and the person who's trialing him has a lot of skin in the game anyway, and he's trying to get the things that he wants. And so it's not a fair trial. He's then taken out because the person who's trialing, Pontius Pilate. By the way, we have a stone from the ancient world that has Pontius Pilate's name on it. So we know that he was a real ruler at this time in this place. He says, "How about this? Look, I don't know what to make of this guy. Why don't we just torture him instead?" And so they take him out, they whip him, and they bring him back in, and the people still cry for his blood. That's the red. It's the red of this candle. And this is how John tells the story now. So the soldiers take charge of Jesus, and carrying his own cross, he goes to the place of the skull, which is called Golgotha in Aramaic. And there they crucified him, which is one of the most humiliating tortures of the ancient world. And with him, they crucified two others, one on each side and Jesus in the middle. And Pilate, who was the ruler, had a notice prepared and fastened to the cross, and it read, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." Later, knowing that everything had now been finished, and so the scripture would be fulfilled, Jesus said, "I'm thirsty." A jar of wine and vinegar was there, so they soaked it and put the sponge on a stalk and lifted it to his lips. And when he received the drink, Jesus said, "It is finished. It is finished." And with that, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. And so it was. The one who they thought was going to be the fulfillment of all this stuff they'd hoped for was there hanging, bloodied, broken, shameful sight in front of them all. So how could this be possibly a better story and a better God? It is about the most shameful story of the ancient world. And those people who looked on it in the ancient world thought it was shameful, and they mocked those who believed it. 2 points to finish on this Wednesday. When you look at history, it's been this cycle of someone gets wronged. They want vengeance, and so they wrong them back. and they want vengeance so they get wrong back. And this cycle of violence and getting one up on each other has been a constant. If this is what Jesus said it was, God taking himself to the cross in our place, the one who was supposed to be able to curse us all, becoming the curse, then it means that this is the place where the violence ends. Hands go from being like this to being outstretched. Embrace. There's no way you can be hurt by a man whose arms are stretched out like this. This is a revolution. If this is how God has chosen to deal with the world, then the violence can come to an end. Secondly, the problem is the people who put Jesus on that cross are not so different from us, right? They thought they were doing something that was potentially worthwhile. They were rolled up by the crowd. That's happened to us. That line of good and evil runs straight down the middle of all human hearts. Christians have looked at Jesus on the cross and the two criminals and gone, that's where we deserve to be. And yet we are not there. The one who was wronged is the one who goes and takes that onto himself. Let me finish with this little story. It's written by an Anglican bishop about the cross. And he's looking at Jesus and he tells it this way. And as he struggles, he recognizes every roaring, jeering face. He knows our names. He knows our histories. And since, as well as being a weak and frightened man, he is also the love that makes the world, to whom all things in times and places are equally present. He isn't just feeling the anger and spite and the unbearable disgust of this one crowd on this one Friday in Palestine. He's turning his bruised face towards the whole human crowd, past and present, accepting everything we have to throw at him. The doors of his heart are wedged open wide, and in rushes the whole flood, the vile rolling tide of cruelties and failures and secrets. And he says this, let me take it from you. He says this, give that to me instead. Let me carry it. Let me be to blame. I am big enough. I'm not what you were told. I'm not some distant king or severe judge. I am the Father who longs for every last one of his children. I'm the friend who will never leave. I'm the light behind the darkness, the ghost of love in the torture chamber. I'm change, and I'm hope. And that's why we call it Good Friday. But he's still on the cross at this point. Darkness descends. How can this be a good story? Let's see tomorrow.